Ever think about breathing? Of course you don't. It's a completely involuntary function that your body normally does without much effort. However, if you did ever of breathing, then you would be thinking about the respiratory system. Over the course of this video, we'll explore the respiratory system, its functions, and what it makes up. With help from our team of nerdy science students, we will discuss the function and structure of the respiratory system, the upper respiratory tract, the lower respiratory tract, the mechanism of breathing, and gas exchanges. The respiratory system's main function is to allow oxygen to enter the body and carbon dioxide to exit the body. This occurs through inspiration and expiration.
Inspiration, also known as inhalation, is when air is conducted from the atmosphere into the lungs by ways of cavities, tubes, and openings.
In other words, it is breathing air into your body.
Exhalation, or expiration, is just the opposite. It's when air is conducted from the lungs to the atmosphere by way of the same structures. This is when air exits your body.
The respiratory system works with the cardiovascular system in order to transfer oxygen from the lungs to the tissues of your body, also to transfer carbon dioxide from the tissues of the lungs. This is called gas exchange.
So that's the function of the respiratory system. But what actually makes it all work?
First, we'll start with the upper respiratory tract. The upper respiratory tract includes the nose, pharynx, and larynx. Let's focus on the nose. The nose, or nasal cavities, is one way air can enter our bodies. The nose has narrow canals which are separated from each other by a septum. You know, that thing people get pierced so they end up looking like a bull. Air entering the nasal cavity is met by large, stiff hairs that act as a screening device. They filter out dust and dirt to make sure they don't get into your lungs. The rest of the nasal cavity is lined with a mucous membrane and a submucosal lining that contains capillaries. Capillaries help warm and moisten the air before it enters our lungs. Mucus secreted falls to the pharynx.
The pharynx is more commonly known as the throat. It is a funnel-shaped passageway that connects the nasal and oral cavities to the larynx. The pharynx is another way air enters our body. The air enters through the mouth and passes over the tonsils, which acts as our primary lymphatic defense during breathing. It is composed of the nasopharynx, which is the nasal cavity opening above the soft palate, the oropharynx, where the oral cavity opens, and the laryngopharynx, which opens into the larynx. We've explained the nose and the pharynx. Next, we'll tell you about the larynx. The larynx is a cartilaginous structure that serves as a passageway for air between the pharynx and the trachea, also known as the voice box. The voice box contains your vocal cords. When air passes through the slit of your vocal cords called the glottis, the vocal cords vibrate. This makes a sound. The tension on the vocal cords creates the pitch of the voice. It varies by the amount of tension. Imagine this rubber band is your vocal cords. When there is tension, the glottis becomes narrow and a high-pitched sound is created. When there's less tension, the glottis is widened and a low-pitched sound is created. Now that we've covered the upper respiratory tract, let's move on to the lower respiratory tract. The trachea, also known as the windpipe, is a tube connecting the larynx to the primary bronchi. Its walls consist of the connective tissue and smooth muscle reinforced by C-shaped cartilaginous rings. The trachea is lined with mucous membrane and small hair-like structures called cilia. Their purpose is to keep debris out of the lungs by catching dirt and foreign particles. The body gets rid of this by coughing. When you smoke, it destroys the cilia, burning it away. So what's left to protect all the junk from falling into your lungs?
Not only is everyday stuff getting in there, but the soot from the smoke begins to collect in the lungs as well. Yum.
What we have over here is a year's worth of tar from a half a pack a day smoker. And over here is about 2 weeks that a COPD smoker would cough up. Looks delicious.
The bronchial tree is divided into left and right primary bronchi, which lead to the right and left lungs. The bronchi branch into a few secondary bronchi that also branch until the branches become about 1 millimeter in diameter. These are called bronchioles. The bronchiole lead to an elongated space enclosed by a bunch of air pockets, called alveoli. All of these branches inspired the name for this pathway to the lungs. for the main event, the lungs. The lungs are paired, cone-shaped organs that occupy the thoracic cavity, except for the central area that contain the trachea, the heart, and the esophagus. The right lung has 3 lobes, but the left has only 2. This is so there's room for the heart. All of these lobes are broken down further into lobules. Each lobule has a bronchiole serving many alveoli. There are about 300 million alveoli in each lung. If you haven't noticed already, if the body wants to protect something, it generally puts gooey mucus or fluid all over it. Same with the lungs. Each lung is surrounded by a pleura. This is a double layer of serous membrane that produces serous fluid. So we know the structure of the respiratory system. There's the upper respiratory tract, which is composed of the nose, pharynx, and larynx, and the lower respiratory tract, made up of the trachea, bronchial tree, all of its branches, and the lungs. Now it's time to put them all to work and breathe. As said before, breathing consists of inspiration and expiration, but there's a little more to do with it.
Inspiration is an active phase of ventilation. The diaphragm and external intercostal muscles contract, making the volume of the thoracic cavity larger. This allows the lungs to also become larger. The diaphragm lowers, the rib cage moves upward and outward, which allows the lungs to expand and allows air to come in. Inspiration.
Consequently, there is a passive phase to taking a breath. Obviously, this is expiration. The elastic properties of the thoracic wall and lungs cause them to recoil or relax back to their original shape.
The diaphragm relaxes and moves up. The rib cage moves down and inward. This allows the pressure in the lungs to increase, so air is pushed out of the lungs.
As said before, we breathe involuntarily. The respiratory control center in our brain allows the nervous system to take care of breathing for us. However, we can control breathing to accommodate certain activities such as speaking, singing, eating, or swimming.
Now that you know the ins and outs of the respiratory system, we hope that you understand how complicated a simple breath can be.